Hello, Planet Sewers. Mathletee here with episode 6 of the Houston Zoo. I have giant otters today. They're playing the part of river otters, so their habitat's a little big compared to the actual one. I do like to keep them happy, but today we're starting with the speed build section of right when you walk in to the natural encounters, and I'm setting up just to the left. That blueprint there that you just saw is made by Mathletee. I needed a fire extinguisher, so I went looking for something already built and included that in this build. So anything that I do borrow from the workshop, I will put a link in the comments below for you guys so that you can go get it for yourself if you need it for your zoo. So I'm just building this little section they have. As you walk in, it has a sink, a little TV. Not really sure what they use it for, but I did want to include it as it is something you see when you walk in this building. And to get this little countertop here, I went through the backs of many different things, signs mostly, but it is useful to flip stuff over. Sometimes they are usable in a different way, and I believe I did end up using a sign. And for the support, I'm using the zoo customizable signs and sinking the sign in and using the poles. It worked out really nicely, and I really like how it came out. They didn't have any granite resembling materials in Planet Zoo, so I just went with that nice little black look and building a little cover around the TV that they had up there. And they just had natural wildlife video playing, as that's what this building is for. It has a lot of different natural wildlife you would find in Texas and in the United States. I just used the general Welcome Planet Zoo video that they have available. Maybe I'll go back and see if I can find something. I have several media things in here that I do need to find something to put there or make my own. And here I am using some golden brass, whatever material that is, pots to make sinks. I didn't really like some of the other options. There was a lot of trial going on. I just cut that out. And same for the faucets. Those are the new lights from the DLC that launched earlier this week. I'm really enjoying all the items for building that came in that pack, as well, of course, the Meerkats. They're my favorite. I think the foxes are next. They remind me of my dog. I have a corgi, big ears, super cute. And this tile is also from that new DLC, and it is so versatile. Pun not intended. But anyway, I'm going to use that here in the entryway. In their entryway, it had more of a light stone look, but I just went with some natural colors. I liked how it came out, so that's what I'm going to go with for this. Getting in some details up here. They have quite a bit going on. As you walk in, I didn't look up when I went to the zoo itself, but in Google Earth, you can actually look up there with the way that they do their camera views. It's, I think, like a 360. They stand in one spot, and the camera takes a picture from all around, and then you can turn and look around. If you haven't checked out Google Earth, it is a great resource for getting ideas, inspirations, things like that. Anyway, this is also from the workshop. It's vents and AC. I'm not sure exactly what the title is when you look for it. I just searched for vents and I found that. And it came from a creator by the name of John Eros. So I do appreciate that in the workshop. I was able to use it here. I've used it in a couple of different builds. It saves me some time. I'm not that creative with some of those technical things. I still find things in the game that I forget are there. For instance, I was looking for a plug outlet and just left it out of this little area because I couldn't find what I wanted. I tried making one but couldn't find the small pieces, so I just gave up on it. And I was looking for something else and I saw an outdoor outlet, so I was like, oh, well, maybe I could use that, but I never did add it over here. And anyway, the lights that we have in the United States are a little bit different than some of the lights they put in here for Planet Zoo. I imagine they probably maybe have more of a European influence, given that they're over in England. Maybe not. Maybe they just tried to find something in the middle. Who knows? But anyway, I'm building a little fake tree over here. And when I shared an image with a friend of mine online, they asked me what plant that was. So in case you're wondering too, I had used what's called a temple underwater plant to add in the greenery on my fake tree. They have, I think, like 3 different kinds. I just mixed all 3 onto that tree to give it the greenery. And here I was deciding if I wanted to bring the tile all the way out or not. In the images on Google Earth, they did bring it further out, so I went ahead and brought it out here as well. And I did change a couple of things, which we'll go over towards the end of the video, out on my Capuchin monkeys with new things that came out in the DLC. And as I do this rock work, I do try to edit out my going back and forth to see if the rocks are coming out of the wall on the other side. When it's sped up, the going back and forth bothers me, so I'm sure it bothers you guys. So I did edit some of that out, hopefully most of it. And so right as you walk in, you do have a little water feature, and inside the water feature they have a little waterfall, and they have some fish, some turtles, and they have a little stingray in there actually. And I wish we did have some of those things. Maybe that'll come in a future update, but I really do hope we can have actual animated fish. I thought about putting a screen in there to simulate it, but ultimately I did not. I just used some fish that I found off the workshop, and when I put them in, I'll give that creator's name. Moving that tree over here, I'm just going to reuse that same tree. I do make a little bit of change here and there on which direction the branches go, or putting the roots on it, or taking the roots off. And I do like to try to keep the roof off as long as possible. That way it's not so cramped for my visibility, and I'm sure it also gives you guys who enjoy watching the speed build sections a better view of what's going on and not having to watch me build in tight little spaces. Sometimes it's unavoidable. I could move the roof sometimes. I just don't think about it. I guess I'm so used to just getting in those little spaces and building. But onward with rock work. This building has a lot of rock that goes through it. The floor is like a kind of like a squishy material that's the same color of the rock. And originally I was going to line the floor in the rock, but I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it looked. I didn't like that it wasn't real level on the top of the rocks, especially with the aquatic ones. And the overall feel just seemed like it took away from everything else. It was a little too much, in my opinion. So I ended up just using, when I get there, it's a plaster floor. And I do go back with what I'm building here and start spinning some of these so that it's not so repetitive in its nature, because as I duplicate, I do notice it did have a lot of repetition when you get close to it. I don't know if I kept all of that in or if I took that out as I built this. I think at some point they all end up in the same group, and I accidentally delete this backside and I have to redo it. I did take that part out, maybe a shot where you see it having that little area that's missing. I had group selected when I was putting in the waterfall and didn't realize I had grouped them all together, so it deleted all this little work I had done back here, spinning these rocks around, giving some variation to what it looks like, and I had to put them all back. But I got a good laugh at myself. Right there I was hoping I could I don't know why I thought it would be a thing, but I could just rotate all of them and they would just spin where they are. After I did that, I got a good laugh. I was like, no, that's not how this game works. You can't do it that way. That'd be cool though. I have an option, spin all objects in place. That would be neat. So onward with spinning little rocks. Those edges kind of look like it has a face sometimes. It was a little creepy when I got close up on some of them. Looked like there was a face in there. Anyway, there's the angry archer, trying to make sure this isn't too out of scale. I do need to go back and change the mesh. When I was looking at the reference after I got this all together, I did notice the mesh doesn't go all the way up to the ceiling. It only goes about halfway. So I'll have to go back and give that a fix. I made it about 10 minutes before Ruby decided her sleepy cage was no longer acceptable to her. That sleepy cage is actually 2 rooms over, and I can still hear her through the microphone. So she is out. So if you hear her rustle, which is why I mentioned her, I will try to edit her out as much as I can. But we're building in the waterfall here. So I'm just testing. I had to redo this water barrier a couple of times. It was so close to the path that it wouldn't let me bring the barrier down to the water level. So I did have to shift some of these things around from my original idea. I had to get the barrier a little further away from that path so that I could get the water down. And that would be why I grouped all that together now that I am watching it back, and how my accidental delete of the other side happened, because I was over here making room for some of this stuff. And note to self, double check if I like my placement of the waterfall bottom before letting go. I ended up wanting to move it and I couldn't find it, and I didn't want to delete everything to move it, so that's where it's going to stay. Adding in a little window there. I wish that the window ledge did not stick out. I guess I could have nudged it over, but I just added a window. And there's the koi fish that I got from the workshop, and those are made by a Lorar. I'm not sure how you say that, but hopefully I got it right. Anyway, I did favorite this, so if you go to my workshop, you can find it in my favorites, but I'll also put a link for you guys, like I said, of things that I used from the workshop that are not mine. I used these fish as well in the aquarium part of the entrance, and to my dismay, that was a lot of work. They are in the process of tearing all that up and redoing it, so I don't even know if they're going to have any aquarium in there anymore, because in that area they are building the Galapagos Island area. So it'll be interesting to see what it looks like when they get all that opened up. But for now, I'm going to leave my entrance how it is until they actually have all that open and I can see what's really there. And this project may still be going by then. If not, I'll revisit it and fix it. So adding in some little logs here that they had for the turtles, I think. Getting those how I like them, in a nice little chunky array that looks pretty. And it doesn't look like pieces just floating everywhere. And getting ready to look for foliage to put in here. I think that is a banana plant. And I don't forget the name of that little guy, but I think it's a tropical plant. I thought it looked good up in the wall. And so I made a nice little row of those, but I didn't want to duplicate them over. So I ended up just using one, I think it was a date palm, and tucking away the trunk, because what's on the other side, nobody's going to see. I have magical staff members. They're going to walk through my waterfall feature. So putting in that floor, got rid of my attempt of the stone floor and putting this in. Since it's all going to get covered with a roof. It's kind of dark in here, so it has that feel of whatever that material is that's kind of soft that they have lining their floor there. The texture of the plaster reminds me of it. So I also have better options for tucking away in the corners with a plaster floor. They have nice small pieces that I can move however I like. And going back into the entryway, I'm going to finish off covering up the bricks. I noticed that the floor was sticking out right there, so I grouped those two pieces together and just separated them out, gave them a little nudge. And they have a nice little mural as you first walk in here. I was struggling to find the right file, so I took that part out. I did part of this on one computer and part of this on another computer, so the file I wanted was on a different one. Finding my otters, I'm going to get them in here. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I need to actually build their little space out. So when I first built this, I'm starting off with a space that kind of resembles what's actually at the Houston Zoo. It's not quite as big. It's really shallow. The little guys that they have in there are actually really small. I think they're smaller than my corgi. And they had 2 of them. I think that size-wise, they were probably a little bigger than a ferret, maybe. So since Frontier has added the meerkat and the fennec fox, which are smaller creatures, maybe they will eventually add in some small otters too, and I can put this how it actually is, a little closer to reality, instead of having to back this all the way to the back. When you walk through here, you do not have access to that area. I'm pretty sure that that is their backstage area for the little river otters that are there, as well as different things to house all the water equipment for this area. It's kind of like a river as you go through, and you have several different tanks with different types of river wildlife that you would find in the regions. And they have a really, really, really big catfish in one of them. I'm not sure if they share the same tank with the otter, probably not, but it looks like they do. But I think they have it actually blocked off in a very creative way. I'd have to relook at my pictures that I took when I was there. So here I do all this work, and then I'm wishing I could just move my little terrain hill that I have there instead of having to make a new one. As I was putting in the glass, I decided I probably need to put in my path so that I don't have to worry about redoing the barrier to get that gridded path in there. But I ended up having to redo some of it anyway. When I get the otters in, I realized there's no way I can make this space quite big enough for them. Even after I backed everything to the back wall, I do have enough space for them. So what I end up doing after I get everything sorted out is building a ramp up, and once I get them up there, seeing if they can actually navigate with the ceiling and the actual roof space, and they can. So I give them more land space on top of their own habitat, so they get a little bunk hideaway, which is not how it's at the Houston Zoo at all, but it works. So right now I'm finishing off that barrier, trying to remake this so that it's big enough for them, moving everything to the back of the wall, making their water area bigger. And that was the other thing I was struggling with, is when I got done with the habitat and checked it versus the Zoopedia, I could tell right away it was not going to be big enough, even without putting them in. So I went ahead and just used all of the space and sent the habitat all the way back and created a big one. And it turns out, for the 4 otters that I picked out, that they have just enough space with my little rendition of making this bigger. Sorry, so Ruby had a moment and all thoughts went out of my head, so I'm not really sure where I was at in my thought train. It has derailed. Anyway, just copying over different rock work. Originally my idea here was that they could have one little plank to run up, maybe two, but apparently these otters are fat and they need 4 to get up there. I actually spent way much more time trying to figure this out than I intended to. I actually got my traversable area for them pretty early. However, when I reloaded into the zoo, my seals have this issue. It stopped registering the water, and I always have to go move one little thing in the water and then all is well. But when I came in here, it was not working at all, and so I edited out all of that, the trying to get my traversable area back so that they could get into the water and make it up into the ceiling area. It was mostly just that one ramp from the ground to the hill. I don't know what the deal was, but it took a while to get it all working. Now it doesn't have any problems, so yay! Alright, so finishing off that little side over there, I kept having escapees. They really like to run for it. They know where the spots are. They go for them. Because as soon as I fixed that down there, they started running around up on the top part where I didn't have the barriers moved yet for my knoll barriers, and kept escaping, quote unquote, up there. So that's why I jump up here, and there's an otter in her box because he escaped. But closing that off, and I moved all the knoll barriers around off screen. It took a little movement back and forth to get it just right. I kind of struggled with my camera angles to see if it was in the right spot or not, and then it kept trying to connect with the Capuchin monkey, and I didn't want it to do that. And I decided I would put these fake plants up here, since my intent wasn't really for guests to be able to see them. You might get a glimpse of them when they come up here, when they get close to the glass, but mostly this was just to satisfy their need for space. But I thought it looked kind of neat from the bottom with a little lush view up there. I could have just totally closed it off and you would have no idea it's up there, and then it would look a little more like it is in the actual zoo. But I kind of like the glass. I don't know, tell me what you think. Leave the glass or close it off. So now we're moving over to this section. Sometimes I get a little jumpy in how I build. Sometimes when I'm problem solving, I just go work on something else until either the idea comes to fix it or I remember that I forgot to do something. I think in this case, it's just I forget. So what I'm starting over here is a exhibit of birds. As we know, we don't have birds, so I do use some off the workshop that were already made, and it's an implied exhibit. And I did do a couple of changes off screen to the shape of the building. I added one more step out, but took one panel away from the diagonal across the building. I just removed that. It wasn't that interesting to watch. And also I wanted to try not to have a marathon video, but I do want to try to finish up this natural encounter building in the next episode so that it's 3 episodes long and not 4. So the next one will finish off the walk out of the building and add in the nature experience outside, and then from there we will go and build 2 different elephant habitats. They have both the African elephant and Asian elephants, I think is what they had. So I will use the 2 elephants we have in game. So I'm super excited to get over there and build that. And then after that, I think I'm going to do the reptile house that's next to this building. There's actually a field and then the reptile house. So putting in my rocks that are in the backdrop of this exhibit for the birds. They actually had mostly small birds, I think like little finches. I don't remember offhand what species exactly it was, but again, they're birds that I see around here quite often. And I think they had one big bird in there, and they also had a big bird in where I had the Capuchin monkey. They actually had quite a few things in there. A sloth, the smaller monkeys, and I think 2 big birds. I really like these billboards. I don't ever use them for their intended use. My favorite use is putting them on walls to make murals. That is actually how it is in the Houston Zoo, is you have the mural when you walk in, you have the mural inside that habitat, and you have it inside the outside habitat. Well, that came out awkward, but anyway. And then I decided to go ahead and put some right here just to break up all that rock work and give a little bit more to look at, which is kind of how they had it actually, is they had the rocks going up and then the painted mural. I really wanted to use the aquatic tree or roots or any of those here, but they did not have the right size, so I went ahead and went with one from the nature area, just a random dead tree, and I was really trying to make sure that I did not disrupt the water traversable space for my otters, because they are right on the edge of that being happy and not being happy. So I had to move some of them around a couple of times and get those just right. I was getting ready to do the trees over here, and it reminded me that I had forgotten to put in those little runways for them. That would be super cool though, if the otters could actually run on those. But those otters are too fat. They, like I said, they need 4 planks. They're 4 plank sized otters, chunky monkeys. So this is just pretty simple. And that was how it was in the actual habitat. Just a couple of trees that are not alive in there, a little skylight, and different rope things that, you know, had a natural look to them for the birds to perch on. And I decided, I saw some Z fighting going on where I had those 2 roof lines meeting, so I just covered it up with the vent. It'll add some realism to the build. I'm still getting better at remembering those little details. Building from pictures, it really helps. And so the birds, I got those from Drake on the workshop, so I did add that as a favorite in my workshop, and I will be putting that link up as well. So I have 4 total things that I borrowed from other creators on the workshop to do this build here on this section. So all 4 of those I will put in the comments of this video as a link, as well as I did favorite them since I'm not really uploading anything from this build as a whole. I won't have an area to post it in Steam in the description like I usually do. If there's anything that you want out of here, I can blueprint that for you. Just let me know if you see something that I don't already have on my workshop. I don't mind sharing it. I may go in and pick some things. So here what I did is I used the plaster floor again. It's just a different color, and it has a piece of glass on top of it. I did the same technique in the Macaw Cafe, and just to give credit to the thought process there, I got that from watching the Koala Zoo series. I think Mike Sheets did it in one of the builds, and it is a really good effect. It gives that nice linoleum look. Right now the sun's really beating on it and making it shine really bright. Right here they do have painted brick on the inside. but the outside doesn't look like that, and I really didn't like that difference in the texture out here, and so I decided to make my own little wall over here with these pillars and cover them up. I couldn't use the fatter one because it would come all the way through, and I didn't want the change of flow on the wall. I wanted it to be straight. I didn't want it to come out and go down some and go back in, so I just covered it up with the brick pillar. And they do have this weird little nook right here, so I'm not really sure what they use it for. When I visited, they just had some advertising about see them, save them, and different ways that you can help by adopting or other options for helping with conservation. So I'm assuming that this is some kind of talk point, given that there's 2 different access doors. So maybe they bring out some of the birds or some of the animals that are in those exhibits in this building and talk about them, because they just have this little porch right there and 2 things on the wall, and that's it. It's kind of a weird little barren spot, so I built it because it's there. I may need to go back and look at it again. I don't remember if they actually have a little false roof right there or if it was just the little porch look. I think it was just the porch look. I do have 2 monitors, so oftentimes when I'm at home at least, I have the game going and Google Earth off to the side. And on this little information panel that I built, I just left the otters there. I'm going to need to make something for the cardinal and the blue jay that I put inside my implied bird habitat there. And they have a little sunroof on the roof here as well, so I went ahead and took out that roof that was there and put that here. I was really upset. I wanted that to fit nice and perfect, and of course it didn't, so I had to go through and find a way to cover that up. I had already known I was going to need some kind of trim between the top part of the wall and the ceiling, as there are some gaps from where the wall is a little offset. Anyway, now that I've got that done, we are ready to take our little walk through here. So we're at the beginning of the Houston Zoo. When the zoo gets bigger, I may pick a different starting spot. But going through our entrance here, I know I've said it before, Tejikam is snail slow or a little too fast. I wish I could find that in between. But there's the Macaw Cafe, and then you have behind us that we just looked at was the guest shop, which we're not going to go into all of that. There's the seal experience, and I think we're going to go the other way today. Instead of going left and going directly to natural encounters, we'll go through the pathway over here by the seal experience. So I think that's episode 3 if you haven't seen it. And then over here we have, this is the reflection pool, which is episode 4. And just go through here this way and revisit what's been done in the past. And last week's episode was the outside of this building mostly, and the Capuchin monkeys. So I did change this out right here. I took out the actual barrier and used the mesh, mostly so that I could raise the null barrier up, because I was getting an escape notification when they went over the wall to go in and out. And here we are on the inside entryway. So last week this was pretty barren and kind of funny looking. It is crowded in here, so I just have a regular in-game advertisement going, and they have this little section here. Again, I'm not sure what it's for, but it has a sink, so I guess they probably use it for something. And then, so there we go. I fixed all that congestion. I gave them another way to get out, and added some vending machines on the back of the building. So we have the skylight entry here. I was feeling claustrophobic with all those people. It feels much better. And going past the waterfall feature and coming in, this is a little wider than it really is in the Houston Zoo, but probably a good thing The otters are quite popular so far in the zoo, so it gives lots of room for them to walk around and ease some of that congestion that was going on. And when I forgot to turn the lights off, so I'll have to do that the next episode. These do have little light bubbles in them. Maybe when I get the roof done, they're a little more apparent and it gives lighting. There's no otters playing over there. A lot of times there are. They must all be in the water or in the upstairs section, I guess, the up ramp. But there's one, and it's swimming. I see a second one. And so like I said, during the speed build, this is wider in here than it would have been in the actual zoo. They have river otters, not giant otters. Their giant otters are somewhere else in the zoo. So I have a feeling for the Houston Zoo build, I may be double using several animals as I go through. But that's okay. And then we're going to walk past last week's build, which was the Capuchin monkey exhibit. They actually have a lot of things in there. Small monkeys. I don't know how to say the name. It's like a tamarin monkey. They had a sloth in there and a couple other things. So we're just going to scoot by that. And I need to make some education things for this exhibit. I ran out of time this week, so I will hopefully have that next week. So we have our Implied bird exhibit. I used cardinals and blue jays from a Drax workshop item that he has available. I think they actually have like finches and one other bird in here. I couldn't remember what it was, but they are US birds, so I picked those two to put in here. And then over there we have just our awkward little space, but next week I'll be building right here. It's going to be a naked mole exhibit. So they had moles there, little tiny moles. So that's going to be a pretty extensive build. And then when you pass that, they have this over here, which I guess is an educational area with some advertising. And I may shift that around depending on how this section goes. They have more river going on with fish and catfish and a little walkway. They have a tube for kids to go through the water, like they're under the water in the river. It's kind of cool. And then when you come through here, they have aquariums. So coming out this door, that's where I added the vending machines to attract some of the guests to use this as an exit. And then out here, they do have a nature thing. They have a really big building right here, which I think is their day camp for kids. And then they have the elephants. And so that will be the next thing. We're going to go in here and look at the exhibit from a staff perspective or the otter perspective. So that's their downstairs terrain area. And then they can go up this little ramp here, which I had to rebuild like 5 times. They're little fatties. And there's the otters swimming around. And let's see, we're going to go see if I can get a peek up here. If I go too far, it just shows us the top side. But there's a couple of them up there. And they're just hanging out. Let's go back down. There they are. And there's 2 of them way back there romping around. So that gives them plenty of space to run. It satisfies their need for space up here. And you can kind of see them from down there. But mostly they're hidden. Anyway, another look at them swimming around from the otter perspective in their little water area with the trees. So thank you so much for watching my video today. If you enjoyed this, think about subscribing, hit the like button, and may the RNG odds be ever in your favor.